So in this video, we're not really writing any code to save and load files at this stage. What we're doing is we're exploring our structure, our code structure and our files to work out where the best places are to put the load and the save, okay? Because we don't want to load the data from file and then have the user change, add more students, add more courses, and then go back to the main menu and erase everything, lose all their changes. We don't want that sort of thing happening. So we're going to work out in this video how we want things to happen and where the code should go, which is a very important step. You can't write the code till you know where it's got to go. Okay, so we'll do that in this video. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Hope it's useful. Okay, so welcome to part 10 of our tutorial series. And so I'll just update the version number straight away before we get started. Okay, so version 10, or version 10. Now, in this episode, we're going to get stuck into the file I/O. So loading from file, saving from file, saving to file, all that sort of thing. So the first thing you've got to ask yourself is, how do you want the file I/O to happen? Do you want the file I/O to happen automatically? So when the application starts up, the data is loaded in, and when the application exits, no matter how it exits, the data is saved. Is that how you want it to work? Or do you want to have a load and a save button on the user interface, or a load and a save menu option? How do you want it to work? Okay, so if you want a load and save menu option or a load and save buttons, you can just create the buttons on the user interface and wire them up to load and save handlers, and away you go. Okay, if you want to make it so the application automatically loads your data at startup and automatically saves it when the app exits, what do you do? Okay, now you might remember in the last episode we created this exit click method in an iExitable interface. And this code here runs whenever the user clicks the little X icon in the top right hand corner, and also when they click the exit button. Okay, so this code here would be a great place to insert our code to write the data out to files, or in fact call other methods to write the data out to the various files, because we've got students, courses and enrollments to write out to file. Okay, and so that would be a great place for that to happen. Okay. So that's where we'd want to put the code to save. If we want to do it automatically when the user exits, then we want to do it in here. So we want to call, before the platform exit, we want to call the code or call methods to save the data to file. Okay. Now, what about loading? What about automatically loading? The first scene we see is our main scene. Okay. And in our main scene controller, which is fxml document controller, that's our main scene. This is our main scene, our main menu, or our main user interface, our startup screen. Okay, back again. And so we could make it so that this code here, when this scene or scene first appears, or every time the scene appears, this initialize method runs. Okay, and we could see that for a fact by putting a little print line statement here, system out.println, print line initialize. And just to prove that's in this class is one, we'll put XML document controller. So we're just showing that that's the initialize method that's running. Okay, and a semicolon on the end. Okay, so every time this scene runs, or every time this scene loads, this message will appear out in the console window. So if we go to another scene and come back to this scene, this initialize method will run again. Okay, so let's just confirm that happens. Okay, so there's a message coming out. Okay, and I'll go to display students and return, and you'll see the message comes out again. Okay, so this initialize method runs every time the scene loads. Okay, now we could put our code to load all the data files from this method if we wanted to, but we have to do a little bit of processing. We have to do a little bit of thinking first. Okay, so imagine the user has started the application, so the main screen's showing with all the buttons on it, and we go and it's loaded data from file. Okay, so the data that was in files has been loaded, and we go to the add student and add a few students, and then come back to the main scene again. We don't want the load data from file to run again, do we? Because that would override or erase the changes the user just made to their students. Okay, the new students they added would be gone if we reloaded the data again and started with a clean slate. Okay, or else, even worse, the data could be duplicated. There could be duplicate students in there from loading the data multiple times, okay? So if we do want to load the data in here, we don't want that method to load the data more than once. We want to control it so it can only load the data once and once only, maximum once. Okay, so let's have a look at that. First thing we'd have to do is have a static variable, static, and it's got to be static, so it's once per class, per all of classes for that, for all instances of the class. That's why it's got to be static. We don't want to recreate the variable each time. Boolean has loaded. Okay, and by default that's initialized to false. Okay, and so what we could do down here in our initialize is if has loaded equals false, then we could call the methods to load the data files, and set has loaded equal to true. Okay, and the way we could prove that happens and works is we could say loading data from file, just to show you that that message only appears once. Okay, so by putting the static variable in, it's got to be static, so it's once per all class instances, not once per instance. It's like it's only created once, that variable, because it's static. And so down here we can check if loaded is true, and if it's not, we could load the data, and in this case we're just going to say data files, the files have been loaded, and then set has loaded to true. So the code inside here will never run again. It'll only run once per application run, which is what we want. Okay, so let's check and see if that's true. So we should be able to run our okay, so here it comes loading data from file. And if we go back to the display students and back again, we still get the initialize coming out. So the method's still running, but it's not going inside here again. We didn't get loading data from file again appear, okay? Because has loaded is now set to true, a static variable. Okay, so that's one place you could put the code or the method calls to load data from file. You could do this sort of setup if you want, but there's an even better way. Okay, if we take a step further up the method chain or up the hierarchy, this is our entry point for our application, student admin app, and we know that because it's got the same name as our package, but the package is all lowercase. So this is our main entry point for our application. Okay, student admin app extends application, which is what gives us our nice window with the icons on the top. And this is where we set the scene and everything for our main scene. We're loading the main scene there. So in here, we could also put the code to load data from files, or call the methods to load the data from files. And this only runs once, so we don't have to worry about making that static variable. Okay, so let's just confirm that happens. System.out.println, and I'll call it, just so I can tell exactly where it is, student admin app, and we're running the start method. Okay, so this method, this line of text will appear in the console window every time we run our app. And I'll just make this a bit bigger so we can see it. Close down the old one. And I must have saved that. Let me just save that again. So Control S, there, now it's saved. Right, now we'll get the version 10 coming out. Okay, so there it is, FXML, sorry, student admin app start. So there is starting. Okay, so that's appearing. And if we go to display students and back again, you'll see that only appears once. Okay, so that proves that no matter how many times we change scenes, this start method only runs once per application run. Okay, so this would probably be the ideal place to do to call the methods that load data from file. Okay, we could do it in the controllers as we saw. We could do it in each controller. We could make each controller load the data it needs if we wanted to, or we could do it in this main scene controller, which is our main sort of menu screen. But we'd have to put the static field in, otherwise it would load the data every time. If we didn't have the static field in and do this, if has loaded check equals false check. If we didn't do that, then our data would reload from file every time. So the user could add some students, type in a student here, add, type in another student here, add, type in another student here, add, and return to the main menu, and it would reload the file again. So all the user's changes would be lost. Okay, so that's why we must have that. Make sure that the load only runs once, or when the user wants it to. Okay. For example, if we had load and save buttons here, we could just pop up a dialog. Are you sure you want to reload the data? You got changes that haven't been saved. Are you sure you want to reload the data? We could do that sort of processing. Anyway, okay, so we've now worked out where we want our load and our saves to go. So we're going to put our code to load the array lists here, to load the array lists and file here. And we're going to put the code to save the array lists here in our executable. Okay, and only when a user clicks OK. So we'll do it in here somewhere. So we'll save the data to file. We're saving the files. And over here in our admin app, we're going to load the data from files. So we're going to write the methods now to do that. Okay, so I hope that's clear. We're putting it in the right places for our app. Okay, and every app's a little bit different. So if you create a Swing GUI, it's a little bit different to if you create a SceneBuilder GUI. It's a little bit different where you put the code, but it's usually there's usually one method that runs at startup, and you can make your code go through a standard exit method like we did with this one, and so you can get it so that you can put the code in the right places. So we'll go back into the controller there and delete this has loaded stuff. We don't need that, and I don't want that method. I don't want that message coming out, and we don't need that boolean. Okay, so we've worked out where we're going to put it. We don't need any has boolean static fields, has loaded static fields. So it's there and in the executable. Cool. So now we've worked out where the code's got to go to call methods to save and load data. Okay, and that was a very important thing to work out. Okay, because our code could have been very faulty or unfunctional if we had to put the code in the wrong place. You've got to put it in the right place. Okay, so now what we're going to do, in fact, we'll leave it for the next video because things are getting on already in this video. We're going to write the code to save students and save courses in the next video, and then we'll think about how we're going to save enrollments. So we'll load and save courses, load and save students, and then we'll get on to the tricky one, which is load and save enrollments. Okay, so thanks for watching. Hope this is useful. Stay tuned for the next video.